All right. Thanks for hopping on
Oh,
back end pairing. Jesse has an issue. Sounds like figuring out how to make refactoring permissions more lovable from the developer experience.
yes. Okay, so let me share. You think I'll do my full desktop and then
Sure.
um, I'll make this full screen so it's big. Okay, so this is the issue. I wrote it up, so there might be missed context here, but we'll talk through it. So this is the summary. Sometimes we want to make permissions check changes in the GitLab code base. But we don't want a behavioral change, right? We just want to refactor. And currently, um, we pretty much just rely on people being very familiar with how our permissions work and hoping we have really good test coverage when we do this, which it can be challenging to do, right? Because we do permissions checks in web controllers, API controllers, views, they're everywhere. So if you're missing testing at any level, you could cause a regression. Which in the world of permissions is not ideal because permissions are a key security feature.
Yeah,
So
I will say this is very relevant to a maintainer review that I got recently that I was like, please explain to me, help me understand so I can know this because I don't know anything. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what this permission check does. I'm not
yeah,
sure what these two you're changing, I remember reviewing and being like, this thing is changing to this one. They don't seem related. The names are like kind of the same, but like, yeah, it was really made me a little nervous to approve and merge it.
yeah, yeah. And like it's, as a maintainer, how could you possibly know, right, what every permission, like you kind of are relying on the author to
Yeah.
know what they're doing.
Yeah. I
Maybe
relied
they're
on the
hoping you
author
know.
to ask
Yeah.
the questions to be like, please help me make sure that someone has vetted this that knows what. I mean, besides you, because obviously, like, I'm assuming they're making a change. They know the permissions, but I just want to like, yeah, I think I wanted another set of eyes that weren't just mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, so like, and then on our docs, and our roles and permissions docs, like I, as a member of the auth team, heavily rely on this table. But this table is human generated. So we don't have any guarantees that like, we do have guarantees in terms of we believe that our documentation is accurate, but there are cases where this does not 100% reflect reality, or there's an edge case that is not reflected in this simple table. And so, like Terry was saying, it's not always straightforward. And the other thing
I
is that
have
the
never seen that
naming,
table before.
oh, it's huge. It's so big.
But then I feel bad. I'm
Um,
like, I probably should have seen it at some point.
a lot, and I can't say that I learn a lot from it because it's so much information. And then there's also, I think there are 23 footnotes now. Yeah, 23 is at 23. There are 23 footnotes on like, and this and this. So it's a lot. Oh, and the other thing I was going to mention is that like there aren't necessarily permissions that are named, like there's not a permission called manage Terraform state necessarily. So mapping like the code concepts and the like conceptual pieces is not a one-to-one. So it's like super complicated. It's like big old math. So I have some ideas for how to go about making this easier. And I can talk about two of them, and I also would love more ideas from the two of you.
That sounds like
Um, cool. So the first is, like I mentioned earlier, like an RSpec shared example. So our permissions engine is declarative policy, which is a gem that we maintain. And declarative policy basically takes in two objects. We'll take in like user and a project, and then you can call policy debug on a specific permission, like read pipeline, and it will tell you all of the checks that it runs and the outcome, enabled, true, or prevented. enabled true or prevented true. So in this case, you could really go line by line and say like, why was this enabled? And you can like walk yourself through the code. So we have this under the hood. So what we could do, say we wanted to do a refactor, and I think I have an example down here. Yeah. Okay. So say we wanted to change read build to read pipeline for whatever reason. We're doing a refactor, like Terry is in an MR review and someone's doing this refactor. And we want to compare like the outcome of these two permissions checks. We could build something like this. This is this little proof of concept where you basically say, what is the project? Because this is a permission check on a project. So what is the project visibility? What is the role of the user? And like, is this allowed for this user? I only am using anonymous user, guest, and reporter here. You could also pass in developer or owner admin. And then basically this compares and through it runs each case in this table and says like, yes, this would evaluate for true, both for read build and read pipeline. And if they were all the same, then you would get to the end and be like, okay, well, these evaluate the same in every case. So I feel comfortable switching instances of read build to read pipeline and not causing any behavioral changes. So that was the initial idea. The downside or like the problem with this that I see is just like, these are project visibility and role are two factors. There are obviously a lot of other things to take into account with these permissions checks. Let me see if I even thought of any. Oh yeah, like I didn't think of any specific edge cases here, but I know they're there. That's why our policy classes are so large, because we're doing all these other checks on, is the user blocked or all this.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's an initial idea.
Yeah.
Any reactions, thoughts?
So looking at this, do you kind of see this as being a test that is used to validate the change, but isn't necessarily checked in committed to master? Or is this something that are these kind of tests that you would imagine to be committed to master?
It could be either. Yeah, like I guess I don't really know. I figured I could add this to some kind of a helper file so folks could use it easily.
Yeah, I was looking for one that you might be able to use. I'm not sure if you've run into it before, but there's like policy contexts that are written for group and project. Like we use these in some of the Elasticsearch tests where these permission tables for the reporter feature, like the file that I linked to you has
if you go back, it was the third one on the list, is the project
okay
table.
I'm looking at Terry's message. Let me just do
that makes fun. Let me see if I can
this
find
is a
the
nice
use of it.
wow.
So let me see if I can figure out where we're using those. We use them, and I think other groups use them too, where you can include a context and then kind of it runs through all permutations, and you can write like specs underneath those. So either you could probably build off of this, or at least make something similar to it. This seems close to what you're looking for, but I think these are more around like the project feature access levels.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure what expected count means in this context. Count of what? Do you happen to know?
Hold on. Yes. Let me see.
Or guess maybe yeah, I don't know.
I think hold on, let me find an example of us using it. Yeah, so I think these are around like the search results, where if you're looking for like how many things should come back, that's
Like
the
if you have
number.
confidential
Like
issuables mixed.
Yeah. If you're like saying, okay, like we have this issue and here's like the permission table for like the issue's access level. Then it kind of runs through all the permutations and says when this user has these like settings, this is how like it should get this record back.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. So this is specific to search in a way, in terms of
In a
at least
way,
the expected count piece.
yeah, I feel like I see it used in other places, but that's not necessarily search, but like we use this. This is how we make sure that the permissions in the database are replicated properly in the Elasticsearch side, because everything has to kind of everything that permission wise has to be replicated so that you can't like look at things through the search endpoint that the UI wouldn't show you. But I wouldn't say necessarily add on to these, but maybe you could utilize it in the same way.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
maybe create like a shared example or something that's like you feed it something.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like, because another thing that I've noticed that happens just like in Slack is we'll get support questions where someone is like, shouldn't an owner be able to do blah? And you're like, okay, let me
How do
go
you
look in
check
the
that?
code.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
that
what
sucks.
permission is checked. And then you're like, okay, this is the permission checked. Now what can that permission, like which roles by default have that permission? And that's not always like super easy to know by reading. I mean, let's just look at one of our policies.
I mean, sometimes you have to go through the
Policy.
commit history to understand why
Yeah,
a certain user
yeah.
can or can't do something, which is
Yes.
interesting. A couple of more ideas for you, Jesse. If you go back to the file that had all the table, like the huge permutation of values, and I think you mentioned using some sort of library that probably generates this kind of like parameterization of tests. Did you mention something like scientist? I don't know what it was called.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so scientist is a different thing that I'd love to
Okay.
discuss. I think the
Okay.
idea would be we would use a shared example similar
I
to
see.
this that has like the grid
I see.
pre-filled out with you customize it.
Well, I think it's, it's a good point that um with different permissions, different factors are going to be at play. And so you're going to kind of always want all the permutations of whatever factors you plug and play there. So it'd be interesting to like have declared ahead of time. These are the project visibility factors. It has to be public, internal, private. These are the role factors. Like these are all the possible values for all the different factors. But then all I declare as a developer, I just declare these are the only ones that would evaluate to yes. All the other ones evaluate to false or something. So it's like that way, me as a developer, I get for free the everything's permutated.
Yeah.
I get that for free because we'll forget cases for sure.
Yes.
All those get run, but I just have to declare just the ones that are on, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and in this particular case, at least in this original vision on the left, actually, you would never do any permutation. Like you wouldn't do any permutations because what you're doing is you're passing two different permissions in. And what you want as an outcome is just to know if they're always evaluating the same value.
Right.
So,
I have another idea for you regarding that. But my child is yelling for me, so I'll be
okay.
It's okay.
you all.
I'm
I'll be right
wondering if
back.
we can, sorry, go ahead, Paul. I'm wondering if we can utilize like almost like a test helper, like the Sidekick has the idempotent test thing that you kind of throw your tests into.
I don't know that one. Do you know where that is?
Hold on.
Is it
I can
another
find
shared
it.
context?
I found it in the docs. Hold on. Declaring a worker as idempotent. Well, I thought it was in here.
Dare I search the word idempotent in the,
Yeah, it might be in somewhere, ensuring a worker's idempotent. I know where the docs, I'm not sure where it lives in the code, it's somewhere.
it looks like there's a
Um,
cop. This is an idempotent worker.
Yeah,
cop.
if you, there's a shared example called an idempotent worker. And basically you kind of put that wrapper around your sidekick tests to make sure that it actually is idempotent. You run it twice and this like nothing changes from one run to the other. Like it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So let me see if I can find the file.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like it's shared examples for, or no? How do I not know how to find things?
There's a lot of use of it, which means it. Hold on, I respect that shared examples. Okay, idempotency shared examples. Here. That one.
Ah, thank you.
It would be cool to have something like that. I'm not like exactly how this works, but like it that you just, you set the old policy and the new policy and then does the rest of the stuff for you.
It does. So people use this whenever they add a new worker, they just use this shared example.
You're supposed to when you add a new worker that's idempotent.
Okay.
I don't say
Okay.
all of them are like that. I don't know if there's a cop now, but before I would mention it during MR reviews, like this is missing the test for it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure if there are workers that I am, but
Regarding the goal of testing if this is a pure refactor, so we do have in our developer guide something about penning tests. Have you ever used or looked into penning tests?
No, like
I think it's like pen, like you pin to something. Yes, pinning tests. Yeah.
pinning.
So these are tests that if you're doing a pure refactor, it's tests just to test the refactor that you don't commit to master. So the first commit of your change will be, we're going to add this pinning test, and it's going to be like a snapshot of the entire HTML page or like a snapshot of function calls. It's like as low level as you want to get just to prove this was a pure refactor. So you have the pinning test, you make the change, and then you can revert the pinning test, but to just test, and then you revert moving the pinning test because it's not the kind of thing you'd want to check into master because it's not really helpful tests. But you just end up reverting reverting whatever, remove the pinning test and running it to assert, oh yeah, this was a pure refactor. We have some like examples of MRs that kind of did this because we were from the front end perspective, we were converting HAML pages to view. So this works great because you would just take a huge HTML snapshot of the HAML page and then a huge HTML snapshot of the view page, and we'll compare the two.
Okay. And so this was Paul using pinning test.
Yeah.
So like you keep those commits as well to kind of
right, and they're not merged. Right. So then we just remove it right after that. And so whenever we want to run it, we'll just revert whatever removed it, or we could cherry however you want to do it. But you showed that debug command, and that's really interesting. Like, and so that could actually be used as a pinning test of let's debug this policy and diff it with the debug of the other policy. And if the diffs are the same, then this was
it's the same. Yeah.
It's
and that's sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say it's a weird test because it's not the kind of like helpful test that you'd actually want to commit. It's just a test to prove to you nothing changed with the execution flow of, or whatever is the expected very specific output here.
Yeah, no, but it's really helpful because it reminds me of how sometimes if my spidey sense tells me that like I'm reviewing an MR and there are tests added, but I'm like, I don't know if these are really testing the change. I'll check out the MR and comment out the code changes and see if the tests still pass. And if they do, I'm like, oh, these aren't These aren't testing
100%.
what you
Yeah.
change. And like almost, it would almost like in an ideal world, it'd be cool if people had to first do a separate commit with all the tests. You can see that they fail. Then you see the next commit with the code changes it, fix it. Like that would save me some review time in certain cases.
Yeah. No, that is related a little bit as well. So I think what would be cool, namely just thinking of, we find ourselves needing to refactor policies. Maybe there is a
Yeah.
cool script that could introduce the kind of test we just wouldn't check in, but it's the test that just gives some assurance this was a pure refactor. And a debug statement is like, yeah, that can traditionally be used in like pinning tests in the backend. It's interesting.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, because there is the second thing is I did add an issue to the declarative policy gem itself saying kind of on the same topic, can we compare these policies? And then our friend Peter very helpfully did a little proof of concept to show how we could do that. This is a bit more granular than the thing I showed you before was just what does it evaluate to, true or false, which again, there could be a lot of edge cases in the logic that we're not accounting for. Whereas this truly does a side by side on like every single check that's done for each of the permissions.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that's a great output from as like a code reviewer. If I'm wanting to know something's a pure refactor, I was like, oh, there's no diff. That's pretty good confidence. And if there is a diff, is like, okay, this is the kind of thing you need to look at. This is very helpful, I think.
Yeah. And again, like you're always running this with a specific user and a specific vehicle in this example. So you have to take into account there are different kinds of users, different kinds of vehicles. But it's like kind of combining those two concepts together, you could have
yeah. And that's what we did in some of those other pinning test examples was like, okay, let's do this with feature flags on, off. So we create like a whole bunch of snapshots. And there's usually though some sort of like, in a perfect world, everything would match. And so then there's also a set of like, we can clean up these like white space kind of noise or whatever. So like, then there's sometimes a cleanup stuff. You can't get it to where it's perfectly green, but
that's perfect.
It's since it's not committed, it's just code to help you develop. It's interesting, but these are good ideas. I love the idea of, some automatic permutation generator thing. Sounds super helpful. And then this diffing, I didn't realize this debug thing was a thing. That sounds really helpful on a number of situations.
And you mentioned, Paul, at one point, scientist. I was curious to ask if either of you had used scientist. The thing that I thought was really funny, excuse me, was the example they give is you're trying to change the way you handle permissions in a large web app. And I'm like, oh, I think this library was developed when somebody had the exact same problem that I have. Anyways, we were using this at my last job. It's more of the tested and prod mentality, right? You actually push the change to production and then it runs both code paths. And if you only use like the old code path, but if there's ever a difference in what the old and the new evaluate to, in that case, we were just like we were like throwing an error. Because we had pretty high confidence with the refactor. If you don't, maybe you log or something. Have either of you used this or thought about it?
No,
what
I
were
haven't used it. Oh, I said I haven't used it. I know we talked about it a little bit in a one-on-one chat, and it sounds, it just sounds so interesting to me because there's so much code in our specs that are like, turn this feature flag on, turn this feature flag off. Like it's, yeah.
This would really change. This touches to that whole process of the feature flag stuff. That's I'd be curious to know if something like this, how closely it relates to our GitLab experiments. It seems really similar, but I wonder if this one's maybe more robust or
So yeah, this came up in another issue where somebody was asking about using scientist for something else. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Nash. And somebody mentioned, oh, we have this thing called GitLab Experiment, and apparently GitLab Experiment used to have scientist as a dependency, so like they do similar stuff. I think the difference, now I'm forgetting. I think the difference with GitLab Experiment is that it's actually for like turning things on. Like there's not a focus on, do these two code paths evaluate to the same thing? Like scientist is truly, does path A and path B result in the same thing? And you want it to, like, because you're trying to do a refactor so the logic stays the same. Whereas GitLab Experiment is here. There's like a control and then different variants. And the idea is that you're like using all three.
the
I'm not
A
sure.
and the B are, I think, intentional variable names there, because I know that this is our way of doing like A/B testing to see what performs better out in the wild, not necessarily what's acceptable and what can be rejected. It's just a measurement of, I don't know, for some reason we measure some sort of data that comes out of these experiments.
Yeah, I feel like there's a completely different end game for the second one, the GitLab Experiment, and the feature. Like those are two things where the end game is there should be something different that happens. Like there's no
Mhm.
guarantee that both code paths should result in the same end. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's like the huge difference. Experiment or the scientist stuff seems like it's more so for like confidence in your code refactors.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right.
It's a shame that it got removed.
Well,
I mean,
I think
I
it was,
understand. Yeah, I guess I understand. There's like some, uh, it might be confusing.
Yeah.
yeah. But it is, yeah, like GitLab Experiment is truly, like you were saying, it's for running A/B tests of like, here's a cool different thing. Let's try it for 10% of users. And what we want, we don't want to do a cool different thing with permissions refactors. We want the boring old thing with a
Yeah.
new name. Um,
Do you think
so.
um do you think it's possible to, for all of our permissions, to quantify all of the factors that go into it? Or do you think that our permissions are too, I don't know what the, for lack of a better word, like imperative, and just have some like spaghetti code in it that you just can't? Does that make sense, the question I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. I honestly I'm not sure yet. I have been thinking about that a lot because what I've observed, just like anecdotally, is that sometimes people add new permissions because they just don't want to bother understanding how old permissions work. So they're like, well, we already have something called download vulnerability, but I'm adding a CSV export. So I'm going to create something called download vulnerability CSV and use that. Because like that's, I can understand new things better than I can understand old things. And I think those cases will be easy to condense because when you look at them, they'll just be two things that do the same stuff. I think the other like project policy, I was just looking at this the other day and like this is an example of like we have all this logic related to like deploy tokens, like we have users that aren't really users.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's more of an edge case, or the user was revoked, or
I know even in here we even have some feature flag checks, and
oh yeah.
those are, I think, always, I'm always not sure, is like, does this belong here? Maybe, I guess. You can't do it if the feature flag's
Yeah.
off.
I mean, we have also quite a few feature flags that just like shouldn't be checked anymore. Like they've been rolled out to 100% for
Yeah.
quite some
I
time, and we just haven't cleaned them up. So
just
hopefully,
my daughter's calling for me again. I'm sorry about that. I'll be right back.
okay.
Sorry about that.
Duty calls.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
So
It's hard.
yeah, totally. Uh, yeah. So anyways, I don't really know. This is one of those situations where I'm like, I hope it all works out with this big refactor, but it's like, you gotta start somewhere before you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think just starting with like, I don't know. I feel like what I've done and I'm Paul's experience with this is just like adding something, using it, and then putting it in the docs and throwing it in as many channels as you can to like get other people aware of it. And your thing may change or it might like grow or be a little bit different, but it's like hard for me to get my head wrapped around to like how do you get people to adopt a way of doing things in the code? The only way I know of is to use them
Mm-hmm.
like pretty much exclusively yourself, and then also trying to like shout as loudly as possible in all of the different spots that other developers might look for like coding examples of how do I do this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and hopefully enough, it seems like enough teams are doing permissions changes that there could be plenty of potential customers for this.
yeah, yeah. I would have been very happy to see this, and there's actually a few like permission MRs that I had to review where I'm like,
Mm, yeah.
because
Yeah.
those, you know, it feels like very high pressure. The security, like a security MR, those are expensive. I feel like those are expensive on developer time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're tied to like bug bounties, which are expensive and like money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I definitely can see the need for something like this.
Okay. Cool. Well, when I get something up, which hopefully will be soon, because I'm going to try to just like get something out there, I'll uh I'll let you know.
Okay.
Let me know what you think of my first stab at it. But anyways, we can move on to something else. I've got a lot of great ideas here, so thank you, you both.
Yeah.
Learned about pinning. Learned
You
about
know,
all
that's
things.
another like I just realized there are like hidden, that's one of the hidden documentation pages.
Oh.
There's no left bar.
Is it
There's
hidden?
nothing.
Oh.
One of mine is like that, and I'm trying to change it because I was like, why is there no left bar? Like
Oh yeah, you have to add it
it
separately.
makes it, yeah, it makes it hard to get it discovered.
It's like
Totally.
the secret menu to your developer.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably there's a page under like development resources that has a huge list of things, because the one that I've noticed from my team that's like not anywhere but there, it's listed there. It's just it's hard to find if you don't already know what you're looking for. I would have never found that pinning testing. You either have to like somehow find it on the one page where it's linked or know to search for something.
I'm surprised. I think because it's old. I remember
Mhm.
when we made the MR to add it, which is why I brought it up. Um, but I imagine maybe it lost its reference, so now it's just hasn't been garbage collected.
Oh.
It's there's nothing pointing to it. Ready to
Well,
be
yeah,
garbage.
the left nav you have to add via the www repo. I recently did that for a new API docs page. So it's hard to remember to do MRs to two repos for one docs edition.
I don't know if it's always been like that, but maybe it has. I felt like though we had something also pointing to this guide as well, but I don't so long ago, I don't remember. Um
Mm.
yeah. The pinning test idea I read about in a really, really great book called Working Effectively with Legacy Code, which
Mm.
a coworker gave to me when I got a job at a defense contractor because he said this is what you're going to be dealing with. As um,
Or like working in banks
I know,
or something
but
like that. Yeah.
it was a fantastic book because it's like all about writing test harnesses and weird code bases. So it was
Mm.
really cool. Um, yeah. Well, I'm game for we can try to code some sort of spec helper thing based on what we were just talking about, or we can jump on Lee's issue that he mentioned.
That's up to you. What
Maybe
do
we
you
should
feel like we
maybe we
need?
should since Lee went so far to bring something up, maybe we shouldn't completely ignore his pleas for attention.
I looked at it, but yeah, I think, I can share the MR.
Yeah. I can drive, or if you want to drive, Terry.
Would you mind, I'm
Sure.
sorry, would you mind driving? I've
Can
got,
you send me the link to it?
yep, it's a link to the original MR that, he shared in Slack. Yeah, sorry, I've got a tab situation on my computer. Don't we
right,
all?
let's-
So,
Let's hope
yeah,
that
you
I'm-
only have 2 tabs open, so.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right. Did you wait? It's not here. You put it on Zoom chat.
I put it on Zoom chat. Sorry, yeah.
Idempotent. I'm not even gonna pretend to ever know what that word means. Idem.
I
Idempotent.
guess, I don't remember either, but, well, I know it means like it runs twice and nothing changes more than once. That's what I have in my head. You can run it as many, you can run it as many times as you want, and it shouldn't, like,
Interesting.
I
It's
don't, I
interesting.
don't think.
I can kind of get the word potent in there, like,
Yeah. Oh,
but I have no idea what the
think-
item prefix
Item.
would mean.
No, yeah, no Latin majors here.
I skipped that
Okay.
class in school.
Oh, yes, this is Winnie. Great. Yeah, Winnie used to be on our front end team a long time ago.
Mhm.
So Lee, he just pinged you to
He
review it?
asked if we had any ideas. I guess let's, like, what the idea is I think there was some comment about the email. There's like no anchor links and notification emails for system notes.
Mhm.
And
Oh.
they wanted to like add that, but there was some issue about the note wasn't, like, the system note maybe wasn't created like at the time, like it's not consistently created by the time whatever. It does not include the right note when closing or reopening an issue, and I don't know why. Or milestones. So it seems like wherever this change was made,
Set up issue mail on.
yeah, I have
It's-
no idea how email works. I try to avoid emails after having experience in their previous jobs. But yeah, it seems like maybe I was hoping that someone that might have a little bit more information, or like I haven't delved into how system notes are created.
I have I'm like, we're probably on the same amount of exposure to this, but there's only one way to figure it out. Like we gotta figure it out.
Well, look. Well, I was gonna say, I feel like what happened here, or like, so we don't have access to the note itself in the mailer method. So the mailer method has the issue and the recipient, but it's not currently aware of the system notes. So what Winnie did, which is clever, is get all the system notes, find the last one, and just assume that's it. I think we can build a system with more confidence. I think we need to pass the system note in when this email is sent. So we need to look at what calls set up issue mail.
Yeah.
Yes.
And see if we can pass the
reassign
note.
Yes, add anchors to links and notification for system notes and issues.
So can we grep around the
Let's-
code base and see where that is called?
Let's do that.
Sure.
Just reviewing code.
Yeah, I know this is also something you're gonna maybe be interested in or not, Paul, but he's like, I've made all these changes and all the specs pass. So there's another issue that he opened about there not being enough testing around this specific area, because clearly nothing failed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's email. All right, so we call this
a private method.
So we call this for an issue is cloned, for moved, all the good stuff.
Yeah, this is as far as I got. I kind of looked at where it was called and was like, ooh, that's a lot of places. And then
I I see. So we were the goal was right. He's wanted to get it, bring it to the bottom note. Like no matter what,
Mhm.
let's just bring it, whatever it was, let's just bring it to the bottom note. Because I guess you click on it, you don't really see what happened.
But I think there must be some disconnect in terms of, um, yeah, I don't know. He was like, it doesn't work consistently. That the note that it's linked, I guess whatever this is doing is not always consistently linking to the correct note. Maybe when you change a milestone or reassign an issue or, um,
View it on
I
GitLab.
don't know.
You're saying view it on GitLab.
Yeah, the comment that they made was, trying to find the comment. Oh, I had it. Oh, there's a question. This does not include the right note when closing or reopening an issue, and I don't know why. Actually, it also doesn't work reliably for milestones.
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe this email thing is sent out before the note is fully saved.
Oh.
And yeah, I would
That's where I was like, I'm not sure. I've run into a lot of like notes are a little confusing because
right.
there's a lot of different kinds of notes.
Mm.
Anchors to links and notification for system notes. So this is the crux of the issue I think is really interesting is, and I would say we kind of want to loop in UX here
Mm.
to figure out what do we anticipate the user really wants to happen when they click on this email link. We reassign the issue. If I click view it on GitLab, are we really anticipating going to the system note that says something got reassigned, or is just going to the issue sufficient? I'm really not sure. So I was kind of hoping like maybe there's a pre-existing issue here so we can get more context of what's the actual problem we're trying to solve. Because
Yeah.
it is then really interesting that this link reassigned issue 41 and then this one at the bottom, or one has the anchor, one doesn't.
Which one does? Oh, before that's after. I mean, I agree with bringing in UX. I do think there are some cases where it seems like we definitely wouldn't want to link to the note. For example, your MR was merged. Like, you don't really need the system note of when it was merged, right? Like, that's not very interesting. But there is also like new mention in issue. Oh, I guess that actually does link already to the issue thread.
Yeah. Let me see what else maybe this target URL it's only ever used there. This project issue URL, the view it on GitLab, the view it on GitLab thing is gonna be, that's where this thing comes from, the target URL. So this is like our notify, this is our email layout, which is gonna always have that thing. So we're just populating
I
that.
guess what team is it? Like what team is the owner, the DRI for emails, or is that one of the like kind of like lilac areas if we're not sure?
I think it's the latter, but
Okay.
let's do a quick search. I actually think it's has to, I think in a strange way it actually is
Email
planned.
notification, project management group. You found it.
So, but I mean, it's email is such a shared thing that it's kind of,
Yeah.
I think technically it belongs to plan, but I don't know. So I'd be really curious to though get plans, UX opinion on, do we want to link to the system node here?
Mhm.
But with that, I don't, I think what you said, Jesse, is like, yeah, sorting it and then getting the last note isn't going to be reliable, because
Mhm.
these run off of like some sort of sidekick job. It's not, these emails aren't sent. Sometimes they build up and more notes are going to be added into it and other changes or whatever. So if we've done one reassign and then I add a new note or whatever, this, I know that these don't happen synchronously as the note was created. You know what I mean? So definitely
Mhm.
new notes can be added as we've done the thing. So
Yeah.
I am concerned about the race condition
Yeah.
we've kind of are considering.
Yes. Also, a counterpoint to what I previously said, just looking at the screenshots in the MR, I now realize that like the issue is linked in the body, but the anchor link was just added in the footer. So it's not changing the main body of the email. Like I guess I can see the value of being taken, like having the option to see the note, system note. Assuming it was the correct one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wonder if this was just suggested, when you're looking at like comments, that is the behavior. Meaning that the view it on GitLab link, it links to the note itself.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
but
you're
I'm
right.
not sure, like, is there a call to action that you can do with a system note? So I feel like a discussion comment where someone's like sent you something,
Mm-hmm.
there is like a CTA, you click on the view it in GitLab and then you respond to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, with most of them, I'm just looking at and random MR to see what the system notes are. And it's like label added, label removed, approved, merged.
I'm gonna respond saying that think there's more to be concerned about than just waiting for persistence. We also aren't guaranteed that the relevant note is the most recent one.
yeah, things happen quickly, right? There's like bots and stuff that are like doing things in the background.
Right. The email jobs run asynchronously and can get backed up. Which means system notes are added in between.
Mhm.
In,
Mhm.
in between.
Yeah.
In between.
In between, like, I guess like queuing and like,
Yeah.
and the notification being sent.
Yeah, which means the system
Yeah.
notes are added between. Yeah, we'll lose the one we're interested in. Brainstorm. I think the most reliable way to do this would be to include the system note ID in the email job that gets created by whatever service is, creating email jobs and system notes. Right? Is that kind of how
Mhm.
I don't know if that's how it works.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
also
I
don't
don't
know.
Yeah, I was also wondering, I have this sneaking suspicion that system notes might be created in background jobs too. So maybe like when an action happens, like we enqueue a job for the note and we enqueue a job for the email, and that might be why it's not persisted sometimes by the time the mail comes in.
Ooh, that's interesting. All right. Brainstorm 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like you
That's
do like quick actions or something that, maybe like reassign quick action, you get an email.
yeah,
Uh,
themselves are created by an asynchronous job. So we don't even have we don't even have, I don't know, what's the word I'm thinking of? Anything to go above and sending email.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm just looking to see if I can confirm this. Sometimes
I think you're right. And you
Yeah.
mentioned quick actions, Terry. I think that makes sense, especially doing like, I don't know, do we ever do system notes for like we ran a pipeline or something? I don't know.
I think sometimes, well, no, I don't know. Is a bot a system note? There's like something that's like, hey, you approved this thing. I'm doing something.
Yeah, let's see where requested
Oh.
review from shows up in our what? Why is
Yeah.
this video?
I just linked a code for where handle assignee is handled, changed assignee change, if that could be a good example too. In the Zoom chat.
Create, yeah, so check this out. Change issuable reviewers. We create a note. How interesting. Okay, so check this out. Change issuable reviewers. Da, 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 da. System notes, issuable service, change issuable reviewers, some sort of base service. We create a reviewer node. Create.
This is why I looked at this and was like,
Oh yeah, yeah. Check this out. Handle reviewers change. Create reviewer node.
oh,
And then here's the notification service. Yeah. So this is that, like, whatever just created the notes, we would want to pass that ID onto the notification service. You know what I mean?
and that looks like very similar to what you just linked, Bessie. That's like create
For
assignee
the-
note. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically like the same pattern.
Yeah. Base service. Seems.
Yeah, system note service is what creates the notes. I was trying to find that. There's system note service, app services, system note service. Wow, services on services.
Yep. If you don't need something controlled, and it's a service. I think that's the design patterns we employ.
Hmm.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, thanks for the good pairing session.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Kind of got to brainstorm on some stuff and then got to take care of Lee's thing almost to, not to a satisfactory conclusion, but to a complete, this is the best we could do.
Hey, it's like 25 minutes. I feel like we did a good bit. So
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on, Jesse and Terry. I'll catch you all later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for your help.
See ya.
Bye.